So welcome everyone. Welcome to Stewarding Trees during the summer heat. And I should say also the summer storms because of this week's rains. And that's a whole other issue. And we'll touch on that as well. I'm Stella Tarnay. I'm co-founder and ED of Capital Nature. And I'm here with my co-founder, Anna Kahanui. And she's going to be driving Zoom. So I'm ever grateful to her for that. And we'll be also monitoring the chat. With us are Kelly Russo-Petrick, who is the coordinator for the DC Master Naturalist Program at UDC. You saw Kelly waving her hand, and we're so glad she's here with us and co-hosting and sponsoring this program, actually. And also with us is Liam Lasevich. He's the head arborist at KC Trees, manager of arborists, and also Melinda Peters, who's the director of education. And they're our on-site experts. So if we have any important questions, they're all going to go to Liam and Melinda. So get ready, you guys. So we're here because, a lot of us really care about the trees, right? And you couldn't help but notice in the last few weeks that the trees were really, really having a hard time. The humans were having a hard time. The birds were having a hard time in the trees. So there are quite a lot of us who want to find if there are ways that we can help and steward and water and help them make it. So that's what this gathering is all about. We have kind of 3 or 4 parts to it, officially from 7 to 8. But I want to note that the presentation team will stay until 8:15 in case anybody has questions or discussions they want to go on. So I'll start out with a virtual walk in 2 neighborhoods I know. I'll show a few slides of the conditions of trees, and I'll be curious how you find the conditions as well in your neighborhood. So please put those in your chat. Then we'll follow with a presentation by Liam and Melinda from KC Trees. Oh, and you're seeing all the slides, right? So we had a preview. So KC Trees will talk to us about some of those best practices, those questions we have, like which trees need watering? What's the difference between the ages of trees and their needs? How often do you water? How much water do they need? And one of my peskiest questions is, what do those bags really do and how do you use them for watering? And we'll also touch on soil health and other aspects of sustainability and best practices for tree stewardship. And then we'll go on to discussion, and we'll have about 15 minutes of that. And that'll be our invitation to you to ask questions and also share any stewarding experiences that you have, any successes, any lessons learned, challenges. We've got some challenges on my street, and I'll share a bit about that. And then Kelly will finish us off with a presentation, a short one, on some interesting and important research that's going on at UDC on tree health in DC. So it's going to be a really interesting hour, and we'll do our best to make that so for you. So let's start with a 5-minute virtual walk in 2 neighborhoods. So this is my neighborhood from a few months ago. Actually, this picture is from exactly a year ago in July 2023. I was taking an evening walk. Just imagine how cooling and comforting that tree canopy was on a hot July evening. Next. Just down the hill on 19th Street, you see one of my neighbors was doing a wonderful job stewarding this tree. I've been walking around this for a year and a half, and it's amazing just how well it's doing. And this person was really being careful with the bag, watering, planting under the tree for organic matter. So it really is a great example. Next. And I couldn't resist and show you up the block on Kenyon, literally 5 or 6 households just over a course of years just connected this strip between the sidewalk and the street and put in native plants, put in water sources for pollinators and for birds. And if you continue up the hill, there's some very happy trees, both recently planted and established. It's a great combination, and they all seem to get along really well. Next. And here you see Anna. We did a tree walk, one of a number at Mount Pleasant, and there's Anna just drawing attention to the amazing canopy of a northern red oak that's at the top of the hill on Park Road. Next. But it's not all, beautiful green bliss. At the top of that road on Mount Pleasant Street on the commercial strip, there are a lot of really, really stressed London plane trees and other types of trees. And here we have 2 members of Mount Pleasant Village, which is a senior aging in place, a wonderful community. We have them in many neighborhoods. And here's John and Jan actually doing a recon walk of what those trees are like. And you'll just look at that soil. That's called anaerobic soil. It's as hard as cement. the roots are stressed. Some of them are winding around the trunk, and the tree really needs water and attention. On the right, you see Robin, who's the new president of the village, and she's one of 20 volunteers who are watering trees. Each of them adopted 1 or 2 trees, and they've been watering them during this hot spell. And by the way, they also mulch a whole bunch of trees over the last year. Next. But you don't have to be a senior. In fact, tree stewardship is a wonderful activity for young folks. So these are 2 of Anna's young friends in the suburbs, and their mom helped them adopt and care for a tree in their deep backyard. Next. It's one of our favorite pictures on our website. But here we go to Quebec Street. This is my new neighborhood, a bunch of big apartment buildings near the metro. And this is the problem. You see in the forefront a young tree that's clearly failing and has probably died. In the background, you see a mature maple, and that tree is doing fine because it has those deep roots and it's matured under more favorable conditions, hopefully, and some good mulching. Next. And here's Nick, a colleague of KC Trees, and Nick is the head of the field crews, and he gave me half an hour, actually, very generously, to look at the trees on my street. That's my apartment building in the back there. We're not exactly close to the street, and this is one of the trees that's ailing. Next. And here's another one. This is a swamp white oak, close to expiring. One of the things Nick said that was interesting, he said some of these trees may come back, especially the swamp oaks and some of the down redwoods and the bald cypress. So watering them might actually make a difference. Next. And here's this tree with that very, very empty bag at the bottom that obviously needed to be filled. Next. Some of the medium-aged trees were actually doing really well, which is interesting. So look at this really, really happy oak. I think it's probably been watered over the years, and it's doing pretty well in the middle of a drought and a heat wave. Next. But another oak down the street, exactly the same size, looks good from the distance, but if you look close, all of those leaves have this stress. They're under some kind of an attack. Leah, maybe you could tell us what that is or was. But when you look close, even the healthy looking trees are stressed. Next. So what's a human to do, right? You care about the trees. I was half the trees on my street are in trouble. And I was walking on Connecticut Avenue thinking about this when I ran into Henry. And Henry is part of a neighborhood group that has organized spontaneously over the last year. And they've started stewarding the median strip between the sidewalk and the road on Connecticut Avenue. A lot of sort of neglected spaces. Some native plants have been put in. This picture is from 5 or 6 weeks ago. Next. And this is what it looked like yesterday. I was walking by, all those native plants are coming up, and a very, very happy young tree that has really been well cared for. And Anna, I'm going to leave it to you. Last slide. Can you take us out and let folks know what tree this is? And if it's too far, I can tell you, but I bet you can tell what this is.
I'm trying to look at them. Go ahead.
It's those, those little things that are hanging off the.
Isn't it elm?
Close.
Oh, it's not an elm?
I think it's a hornbeam. Can you confirm
that? Oh, you think it's like a Carpus caroliniana, the American.
I think it's a healthy hornbeam. And Liam, when you guys come on, you can confirm that or not. But
just I'm wondering if it's hop hornbeam and not hornbeam. I think it might be hop hornbeam.
Could be. Yeah. Could be. So we look to our KC Trees friends, but it's a very, very healthy tree. And I think there's a good prospect for this with just the TLC it got. So I'll leave you with that slide and the walk in 2 neighborhoods. And now let's turn it over to KC Trees. And Liam, tell us what that tree was.
Yeah, it's hard to tell from the picture, but definitely a hornbeam of some sort.
Yeah, one of those.
I'll share my screen.
Yeah, Katie, I like your comment. Tree idea is hard.
It is.
It can be, but we can help with that. It's also really fun.
Cool. Can everybody see this?
Yes.
Great. All right, well, great. Well, we're very happy to be here with you all this evening. Thanks so much for joining. And, we do a lot of work in Washington, D.C. We're the urban forestry nonprofit that has a mission to restore, enhance, and protect the tree canopy of our nation's capital. And we do that through a lot of different opportunities with community groups and volunteers and students. And we wanted to, jump on and join you all this evening to talk about some of these best practices for our young trees right now and the summertime, and answer some questions about kind of how we think about our best tree, the right place for different spaces as we deal with these climate efforts in our city. And then I think we're going to hold, Stella, I think we're going to hold questions to the end, right?
Yeah, I think let's
Put
try
them in
to
the
do.
chat and then we can kind of check back at the end. Oh, sorry, I forgot to tell Lam to switch. So switch, thank you, Lam. Yes, this is our mission and lots of fun photos of things that we do. I do want to note we're going to share some links, and we do have upcoming tree care opportunities, even one this weekend, and more to come on our calendar. So I know Anna will be sharing out some links for folks, but that's a great way to like get your hands dirty and really learn like best practices for tree care, is to come out and join us for one of our upcoming events. All right, next, please. And I always like to mention and note that we do work really closely with the city and the city arborist who are maintain our street trees in the district. And as a kind of collaborative goal across the city's plans include this 40% tree canopy by 2032 goal. And we are helping to reach that goal by really trying to focus our efforts on more private lands with residents and larger parcels that might be owned by faith-based groups and schools. So that's how we coordinate and collaborate together. All right, next, Lam. All right, so you're lucky that we're going to give you some great resources tonight. And we do weekly watering alerts in the summer that are quite useful through our newsletter. And again, we'll send that link so you can, if you're interested in kind of keeping track, but it's really monitoring how much water, is out that we've had during the week, and then how much to kind of help offset for young trees. So Liam, you want to start your little section here?
Yeah, we'll do. So yeah, I guess kind of what to look for when a tree is stressed. Here at Casey Trees, we kind of do it on a more temporal scale of when it hasn't rained or how much rain we've gotten per week. But, if you're in the neighborhood, and especially this is kind of more geared towards young trees, but like with this drought, we've seen a lot of like stress in older trees, which is very concerning. But so if you're in the neighborhood and you want to see how your trees are doing and things to look for kind of drought stress. So first one is just kind of wilting and drooping leaves. You can also get yellowing or browning leaves. Also just kind of like premature leaf drop. So, we always say leaves are a great indicator of a tree's health. So just kind of look into those for indicators. Then you can also kind of look at the soil. If it's very dry, very hard, and you actually see cracking, there's no water retention there, and the tree probably needs help. And then this other bullet point, just going back to the leaves, discoloration and kind of leaf scorch is an issue to look for. Cool. And then you kind of get to, when should I water my trees? How much water do my trees need? And should I use watering bags? Which the last question is, I can say a lot about it and you'll hear about it. So when should I water our trees? As I mentioned before, Casey Trees kind of operates on a temporal scale depending on how much rain we get. So our rule is if it doesn't rain 1.5 inches within a week, and again, this is for younger trees, like about 4 years and younger, planted in the ground, we'll go out and water the tree. And 1.5 inches, it's kind of an arbitrary number, but we have found like even if it rains like an inch or less, that tree might be healthy, but it also might be at risk if it's just like an inch for a week within like a 4 week drought. And then as to how much you water, that really goes to our old fun saying 25 to survive. So again, this is for younger trees. 25 gallons, which is about 5 minutes on a hose, is enough to get a deep soaking, and that's once per week. If you want to get really technical with it, the standard is 10 gallons for every 1 inch caliper on the tree. But 25 for survive is a lot more fun to say, and it stays in people's head, and it's enough for any kind of younger tree. And then, should I use watering bags? I kind of alluded this is kind of a big topic in the tree world. Here at Casey Trees, we've actually phased out watering bags, and there's a number of reasons. The first is it was an extra piece of plastic within the and it's kind of wasteful, especially when we're just like using hoses anyways by the tree. The second is we found people were really misusing them. You really want to like operate them in a way that it allows a slow trickle, and that's kind of their advantage, that you can fill up real fast and then it'll allow you to have that kind of seeping effect. But people were misusing them and they're really prone to damage. So, you know, you can use them for a little bit, but as soon as they're damaged, that's another piece of trash going into the ecosystem. And then kind of the other reason, and this is kind of more to like us using them on the mass scale, was we're finding they were getting really, really, really dirty to a number of reasons, and it became kind of a hazard to pick them up. People are putting trash in them. The whole other slew of things are happening. So in place of watering bags, especially if you're a residential tree owner and you just have a tree in your yard, I really recommend just using a hose. And the kind of way we recommend is using a slow trickle, but in these kind of dire times with like these droughts and high heats happening, the main priority is that you're able to water the tree. So convenience is definitely something we consider with homeowners. And yeah, the end goal is just to water. How should you water your trees? I kind of alluded to, like, the most ideal way is to kind of bring your hose to a slow trickle and let it sit and move it around. But obviously that's can be very time consuming if you're thinking about 25 gallons. So our advice is to simply soak the roots for approximately 5 minutes. And a key thing is once a week. Overwatering trees is a thing. You can promote root rot. And then if you're watering less than 5 minutes or less than that 25 gallons multiple times a week, you're really not penetrating the soil in a way that's productive for the tree's establishment. And another important note is just to make sure you're at the base of the tree, not the leaves. Sometimes with tap water, there's damaging effects that can happen to it. And if it's really hot enough, the evaporation on the leaves can actually burn and ultimately harm the tree. Another way, you know, if your hose doesn't reach, you can bring a bucket. But a key note on that and kind of the hose too is you really want to do kind of a slow pour. If you're really blasting your tree with like high pressure on the hose or the bucket, you can, one, mess up the mulch, and then two, really not get that like deep soak you're looking for when you're like trying to help a tree in a drought situation. Yeah, so that's it for watering, and I'll allow questions later. But another important aspect to young tree care is mulch. And this is another really contentious issue within the tree world, because if you look on the Right, you'll see volcano mulching, and this is an issue we just see everywhere, and it's kind of discouraging when you're planting a bunch of trees, especially in like large private property areas, and then somebody pays a landscaper to basically kill their tree over time. So we follow the 3-3-3 rule, which is, so you want your mulch to be at least 3 inches away from the base of the tree. You want it at least 3 inches deep, and actually maximum 3 inches deep, because you don't want to get that volcano mulch effect. And then generally you want it in a 3-foot radius. Probably most important 3 of that 3-3 rule is 3 inches away from the base. If you do have the kind of volcano mulch style, what will happen is over time, the tree's roots, which generally go to the path of least resistance, will circle around the tree, and in 20 years' time, that root will strangle the tree and it will die. It's a very unfortunate thing. And it's a very unsustainable practice. So if you see this and you have any kind of, authority on how these trees are cared for, definitely talk to the landscaper in charge, because it's an issue we see all too often. Cool, and I understand we'll be doing questions later.
I think so. Stella, do you want to do that, or what do you guys prefer? We've got a couple questions in the chat.
You guys want to address those now, or?
Yeah, I think that's probably good.
Okay, great.
Sure, why don't you go ahead? They were pretty specific.
Yeah. So the one, do watering bags work against young trees if it rains by tarping the tree within the dew line, trapping the tree within the dew line?
Sorry. Well,
Whoops.
I'll stop sharing.
Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, that's another issue we found with watering bags, is that, if they're not taken off like during rain events, they can actually trap moisture between the bag and the tree, and that can promote rot, especially in cherries.
Okay.
And there was another question about the
Mhm.
numbers. Again, I think it was
I
the number
put
of
it in there, but really kind of remembering that for young trees that have like a trunk diameter of, if you can get your fingers around, like 1.5 inches, 1 to 1.5, it's 25 to stay alive. And
Yeah.
that's 25 gallons. Or with a hose, this, I know we may want to talk about, like, how do you do that? I mean, we get like the 10, what are they, 10-gallon buckets, and use those like at our school sites. Hose hookups where you can allow them to kind of sit and drip around the mulch area for a few minutes and kind of move along.
Yeah, and
There's
also,
different methods of getting the water there, right?
yeah, I'd say like find the right pressure where you can water the base of the tree and have the water sink at the same time rather than just like outflowing. And then getting a bucket and really just like getting a timer, and you can figure out how many buckets you fill to
And
how much time.
Anna, we've got a YouTube video that we will make sure that we can share out too.
Sure. Did you want to show the video
I mean,
tonight?
it's not long if you guys
I
want to
think it's
watch
like
that.
I think it's like 2 minutes 50.
Mhm.
So let me go to okay, I see it there.
And then Katie, you had a question about tree diapers. Yep. Some folks use those, but again, I think it's similar to the bags, right, Liam, where if somebody's kind of monitoring and watching, then that may work for your site.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if it's a mass scale and you have to water a lot of trees very quickly, they can help. But for the individual homeowner, or if it's a street tree, again, it's kind of another piece of plastic into the ecosystem, and you can do just as much with a hose or a bucket with avoiding the risk of it breaking and trapping moisture between the bag and the trunk.
Mhm.
Melinda, do you want me to show this video?
Sure.
Okay, let me try to share my screen. Share. I can't see all my stuff. There we go.
Trees, like all living organisms, rely on water to survive. Young trees like this one are especially susceptible to drought and hot weather. We find the single most important factor in newly planted tree survival is water. Continue watering through the first 2 to 3 years after planting for happy, healthy trees. Trees should be watered weekly or when they start to show signs of dehydration. Leaves that are curled or droopy are the most common visual of a thirsty tree. Remember, young trees can need up to 25 gallons of water per week, equal to 1.5 inches of rainfall. While our dedicated crew is working tirelessly to water newly planted trees, we believe that each one of us can make a difference by taking responsibility for watering and caring for trees in our own surroundings. Here are some tips on watering. Water slowly. When the ground is hard and dry, water will run off if too much is applied too quickly. Instead, turn the water to trickle. Then place the hose a foot or so from the base of the tree. Let it run for an hour or 2 or more. Occasionally move the hose nozzle until you've watered the entire root zone of the tree. If you have a small sprinkler head, you can use that to cover a wider area. But again, be sure to turn it on low. You can also water with a 5-gallon bucket that has around 4 to 5 holes drilled into the bottom, each about the diameter of a pencil lead. Once you fill the bucket, place it at the base of the tree and let it drain. Move it slightly and fill it again. You can repeat this process up to 5 times for a total of 25 gallons. After you've saturated the soil around the tree, remember to do it again in about a week's time. If you're unsure about when to water again, sign up for our watering alerts, released weekly in our Leaflet e-newsletter. Empower yourself and make a positive impact on the health and longevity of our urban trees. Together, we can create a greener, more resilient city. Thanks for watching.
All right, so let's go ahead and Liam, do you have some more slides to show?
Ollie
or-
and Anna, you so
Okay,
perfect. What people
Oh
didn't.
gosh, hold on. Sorry.
No, so that's what we've got for our kind of updated our watering stuff there and mulching.
Okay,
And we have some other, I think there's some other questions that
Any
we
other
can,
questions?
Yeah,
sure.
there was a question about if we can't water all the distressed young trees in the neighborhood. Did we talk about that one yet?
Oh, no, we haven't.
Is there a way to report those in distress to DCPR, assuming DCPR takes responsibility for watering trees?
Well, I
You
think
see-
that's where I was going to ask you about the maps. Did you guys decide not to show
Oh.
them? Because
Oh,
there's an
yes. Oh, no,
forestry
yes,
map.
we want to show the maps, yes.
That's helpful, yeah. Both of them or just one of them. I found it really helpful for our neighborhood.
Okay, so yes, let's show you that. That's
Right.
actually a good segue.
Mhm.
So the city and us, we both kind of track our watering process through using GIS tools, and the city manages again their street trees. And we, of course, work on all the trees that we've planted with partners and in different sites. So Liam's going to show you a little example of the tools that we use. So the urban forestry tool, you all can actually see this. You can go to their website, Again, we'll make sure all these links are shared out, but you can go in and zoom into a neighborhood, a street, and find the different trees. And if you want to water it, you can actually sign up and help sort of adopt that tree and mark it on their map. This is again just for the street trees, so you can kind of get a sense. This also tells you the type of tree, so it's great for a little tree ID session. And we do something very similar. So Liam, why don't you talk, you can just share how we really manage. We get into a little bit more detail, and this may or may be of interest to some of you for.
Yeah, so
data.
this is our ArcGIS app created within our GIS team. I'll take off a layer just to unclutter it a little bit. But basically, every point here is a tree that we planted within the last 2 years or so. And it's divided by zone. So we have different crew members responsible for different zones. And then the colors here kind of indicate priority. Blue trees we've watered within the last week. Orange trees we've watered maybe a week ago. And then red trees are all the trees that we've planted that haven't been watered within about a week and a half. So we'll be hitting them by the end of this week. So as you can see, there's a lot of dots, so it's a massive task, and this is like helped tremendously and just kind of keeping track of, you know, where we have to go on what days. We planted something about 6,400 trees last 2 seasons, so this has been very, very helpful.
It's amazing how much you guys get done. And if a person is lucky, they can see your nifty little truck moving around with the water and see your crew jump off. And it's always like our heroes, you know, it's as popular in some of our books as firemen and firewomen. So, you know, I don't think you mentioned this during your presentation. I had to let people in, so I was multitasking just a little bit. But you said to me when we were prepping that people often have the mistaken kind of notion that all of the trees in the city are being watered by KC trees and a lot of the street trees, and they often, and you know, there's this frustration, right? On my street too, on Quebec Street, for example, my neighbors will say, well, why isn't the city watering the trees? So can you talk about the protocols that are followed by urban forestry and their contractors, and then by KC trees?
So that's like actually a question I deal with like quite a bit as somebody who kind of fields the question for arborists on behalf of KC Trees. So we sell a lot of trees to the city to plant in kind of right-of-way areas. We actually plant a very small percentage, about 400, and then kind of the deal that works out with the city is if you plant the tree, then you're responsible for watering them. So KC Trees kind of gets in this, a bit of an issue where, you know, people see our tags on our trees all over the city, and then they don't see them watering, but that's on the other contractor. And if there is concern, and you really don't see kind of anybody coming by for a tree, it's a 311 kind of issue you could submit. But yeah, hopefully that clears the air if anybody was wondering, like, oh, I see this tree, it says KC Trees, I haven't seen them ever water this tree. That's because it's really not part of our contract. And honestly, as you can see here, we have a lot on our plate for our crews. And it'd be pretty hard to hit every single city tree, because the city does plant quite a bit every year.
And they have contractors who do that for them. And I learned from Nick actually that, you know, all the trees on our street were planted under the auspices of the urban forestry division, and they hired out contractors to do that. And those contractors, he said, fairly responsibly do water every 2 weeks for the first year. The problem being, and this is our challenge, folks, is that during a heat drought like we had this July, once every 2 weeks probably isn't enough. and the trees were showing it. So it's a really interesting question for the new normal, climate change. Are the protocols going to be enough? Can the city change those, or are more of us going to need to be stepping up to help take care of those street trees? And that's what we're hoping to do on Quebec Street. So I know some of my neighbors are here, so more power to us. Do you still need the map up, or can we go to gallery view? And let's go ahead and answer any questions people might have live, or any that haven't been answered in chat. We have our experts in, so feel free.
We've got one about a red maple street tree.
Yeah, I answered that in the chat, but
You did, okay, good.
but yeah, I mean, especially again in times of extreme drought, trees will often just like, I know I mentioned earlier that leaves are like really good indicator of a tree's health, but in terms of a tree's living status, you really want to check the buds, and then you can also do a scratch test where if you just scratch the surface very, very lightly, and you see green, that means there's still photosynthesis flowing through that tree, and that means it's still alive. So in periods of intense drought stress, certain species will just drop their leaves prematurely, but if you're able to water them and they're able to go into dormancy in the fall, hopefully next spring, kind of revive and have another go at another summer growing season.
And a good question here about recommending, do you water year round for young trees or just in warm months?
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, only during warm months. When trees are in dormancy, they really don't need that much water. So we usually start watering around really when the temperatures kind of stay above 80 degrees. So yeah, right now it's like kind of late April, early May, and then we water through the end of September.
Yes. And then this is a good question. Are the trees planted by the city exclusively native? And if not, any idea why? Yes, that's a good one. We get this a lot too. So I guess I push that back on you all. If you were a tree trying to live in a city space, that's not necessarily the habitat that all of our native species are used to. So we've had to, find trees that can really adapt and survive in sometimes pretty harsh conditions. And so there are definitely species that are planted that they're not invasive, but they are not in the traditional sense of what you may know as native species that are in our neighboring forest. But it's serving a different purpose for the right tree for the right place.
So I've seen many more Kentucky coffee trees, for example. They seem to do well in weird urban conditions.
We're also in some interesting climate times, and arborists and researchers are really tracking. There's a lot of native species from the South that may not be native to maybe what you define in our forest here, but as temperatures shift, we may want to start introducing those that into our space because they can handle these droughts.
But I have been impressed, and I think of Kathy Sykes up Connecticut Avenue, and in Mount Pleasant, and in Oxenrun Park, where there's some really gorgeous native trees, oaks and maples, and cherry trees, native cherry trees, which are doing really, really well in urban spaces.
Yeah, and we definitely want to have more native species and think about that in design plans. But it's a little bit of a mix still sometimes.
A couple other things. We were asked if you can drop that link to the Casey Trees map in the chat, if that's something you're able to share.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's an internal map.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
But the city tree
map
tree, yeah, that one's on there.
Another question, when are the months of dormancy typically?
Good kind of that, well, you know, again, that's all shifting too, right? We used to not plant really in December, January, February, because the ground was frozen. We've been able to do more into these months. So, you know, dormancy is really after leaves drop.
Can you guys say anything about soil health and also about storms? Because you know we had those 2 weeks of heat and drought, and now the week of monsoon rains up in here in Northwest DC. So, what are some conditions or tips about keeping the soil healthy and water absorbent? I think we've covered some of it, but I'd love to hear from you, Casey.
I'm happy to speak on that, Melinda.
Okay.
Yeah, in terms of soil health, like I didn't mention this, but that mulching really helps cultivate our organic matter layer. And that really helps with kind of retention in the water within the soil. And it helps it evaporate a little less quickly, because what happens in these kind of like hot, then wet, then hot and wet, you basically bake the soil into a clay. And then, yeah, to kind of help with the soil health, just keeping on watering and making sure that organic layer is productive and consistent helps a lot.
So all those little native plants do a lot of work, and the trees and the plants seem to like each other a lot. So
Yeah, and also yeah, kind of cultivating a nice understory for more mature trees helps a lot too in terms of retention.
I'm wondering whether we have any stewards here in our virtual space who have had a good experience. I know I asked some of my friends in Mount Pleasant. I don't know if they were able to make it, but if they wanted to say anything. Not sure I see Jan or John. I know they're traveling. But they have a wonderful story about how they organized. Then they found a cart for the buckets, then they found the buckets, then somebody found a hose, and it's a wonderful community project. Why don't you speak up if you're here? My sense is maybe I got to tell that story. Anyone else? All right, then let's go on to other questions or any stewardship experiences. How are you guys doing with organizing? Go ahead, Anna.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was going to ask the question if any of you have had a chance to organize. We've actually found it quite challenging on Quebec Street, where we have these giant apartment buildings. How do we actually get the water? Then how do we get the water to the trees? What methods do we use? So I think one of the next steps that needs to happen is, it's great to have the maps. It's great to have the instructions. We got to know how to mulch, right? Like I learned donuts, not volcanoes. That was like a great aha moment for me and a lot of other people. We know we love the plants. But then, like not all of us live in these wonderful single family homes that have these spigots that are conveniently located right next to, you know, the street. So I think that's going to be the next frontier, is how can those of us that are interested in being neighborhood stewards, how can we manage all those logistics?
Well, if I'll just weigh in, Kathy, I do vacation and I do have neighbors and master gardeners, master naturalists who agree to help cover one part of the pollinator corridor when I'm away. We've just bought lots of hoses, and there are some outdoor, we've done them by businesses, the nursing home, the Montessori school. So there are some places with outdoor spigots. Otherwise, we have a lot of watering cans, and then we find the closest outlet. But you're able to do it. You just have had to, we've got really long hoses, and some that we even connect to reach the places that we need to have 2 long hoses to do it. But there's people who actually want to help out and would love to water. Again, I'm not there to see how they do, but, and we had, I know, a really tough time, but with the drought, with, you know, the cool weather in May and the wetness, and then the drought that continues. I know we're still below normal, but I think at least some things are still on life support and hanging in there. So it's kind of like asking and having a community where, you know, using what we do is through the Master Gardeners, Master Naturalists, but also through Van Ness Main Street, when we get the community involved, that will help all year round.
Yeah, you guys are a great example, and the Cleveland Park folks in Mount Pleasant. Has anybody else succeeded in actually organizing kind of an ad hoc or official group? It's kind of a startup thing. There aren't that many groups doing it yet. We'd love to see more. Okay, if not, are there any other questions within the chat? And if not, we can go to Kelly, and she's got info about 2 great research projects at UDC. And some of you will, I know, be interested in those.
We do have people who have put comments in the chat, so I don't know if people are looking at that. Lori says, I live in a townhouse community. Hoses are not an option for a lot of our trees. We carry 2 cans or buckets, so it ends up being 4 to 5 gallons carried a fair distance. A few of us meet Sunday mornings to water. That's great.
Thank you for that. That's great.
We do play some fun games with some of our summer youth programs and do tree relays with watering games. Sometimes we're like, how much water is actually getting on these trees? But that's also helping to kind of steward. And we have cute watering cans that.
That might be a cute scout project, maybe a community, maybe
Yeah.
they have scouts and they want to get the kids engaged. That might be something that would help them towards their environment badges.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
It looks like you guys have been answering some of the specific species related ones. So thank you. Did we cover what are the watering requirements for established trees? Did we cover that one yet?
I think the answer is they're probably okay, right?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, it depends on how established they are, you know, like trees, maybe. Sorry, I realize I'm muted. It depends on how established they are. You know, trees maybe 2 or 3 years out of that 4-year mark are still very vulnerable, especially when it's weather like this that's unprecedented. We have seen some some issues with some larger trees. And actually I've observed some failure, but mostly they should be okay. And if
it's really those young trees, the first 2 years, it makes all the difference. Kind of like Head Start. I always think it's like Head Start for trees, you know.
We'll have to do a follow-up and talk about kind of that proper pruning and structural care too that helps, you know, later on. That could be a winter talk.
It's a great idea. So I think let's go to Kelly. And Kelly, if you could share your slides and tell us about the 2 really cool UDC research projects.
Thank you, Stella. So I got a thing saying, even though it worked earlier, it says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Huh. Our Zoom is doing mysterious things this evening.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, so let me. So you are co-host. Okay, why don't you try now?
Okay, there we go. Now where is the? There you are. And of course, it's on the last slide. Are people able to see that?
Yes.
Okay. So, hi everyone. My name is Dr. Kelly Brusso-Petrick. I am the Master Naturalist Coordinator at University District Columbia. I'm also the project specialist in urban ecology there. And a lot of the research and projects I've been working on have been tree related. So I decided to share that some of those with you. And I apologize for the cat in the background, as you can hear her. So one thing I've been working on recently is to get University District of Columbia Tree Campus Higher Education recognition. So we've been working on this with a community volunteer named Jean Kavinsky and my boss, Sakani. And basically, this is a recognition for campuses through the Arbor Day Foundation. It's modeled after their Tree City USA program, which the city of DC is a part of. But a lot of the individual universities aren't. I know American University is part of this, but UDC isn't. And there are a number of benefits to doing this. So basically, I mean, you increase the amount of trees on campus, so you get more benefits from trees, and the trees are better cared for. It also helps educate next generation, the college students, about the importance of caring for the environment through service learning, and it helped gets recognition for the university and its dedication to tree care, both across the campus and also throughout the wider community, both the wider educational community and throughout DC. So the way you get this certification is by meeting 5 standards. So the 5 standards that have to be met are establishing a campus tree advisory committee for composed of people throughout the community. So you have to have someone from the faculty, a student, someone from facilities, and community members. So I know several master naturalists people, including some people on this call, are part of this committee. We have started establishing it and just had our first meeting. Another one scheduled for August. We're still trying to get a facilities rep, but otherwise we have all those groups covered, and there's a lot of master naturalists and community members that have had really great feedback for that. So one of the things we're working on as a committee is to establish a campus tree care plan. So basically a plan for caring for all the trees on campus. Part of doing that is to conduct a tree inventory. Basically just, have an inventory of all the trees on campus. I know KC Trees has some data of trees on campus. We don't have anything up to date. So basically the inventory consists of identifying all the trees by species and collecting DBH, or diameter breast height, and marking condition, as well as potentially making any management recommendations that you might have. So the first one was in June, and there's gonna be another one this Saturday, 8 to 11, and we're going to drop the link in chat to that, because I think we do still have some slots open in the morning. So that's on the UDC campus, and we're going to be meeting at Denard Plaza. Okay, thank you for dropping that link. So that's part of developing the tree care plan, or that's necessary to develop tree care plan. Another thing we have to do is verify the annual expenditures of the tree care plan. Another thing is Arbor Day event, which I'll go over in the next couple of slides. We just had one in April, and I'll talk a little bit about that on the next slide. And creating a service learning project aimed at engaging the student body. So I'm currently running the Green Zone environmental programs through DOEE, and I had the students learn how to conduct a tree inventory and inventory some of the trees on the Lamont Riggs campus, and also do some seed collection, native trees. And next week, that was a few weeks ago, next week they're going to grow those seeds in a greenhouse and learn how to plant them. And so yeah, so they go through that whole process. And in addition, learning project, hopefully I've started talking to KC Trees about this a little bit. We're still in the early planning stages, that I'm teaching general ecology in the fall, and we're going to do a tree planting in November. Oh, sorry, it says my internet connection's unstable, so let me know if there's trouble hearing me. Let's see. So this is the Arbor Day event. We had KC Trees come and plant 2 hackberry trees on Denard Plaza on the Van Ness campus. And we had multiple speeches, including First Lady of the University, Tanya Eddington, come speak, as well as we had a tree serve. We had people fill out, and also had an educational talk on the ecosystem benefits of trees, and then taught people, how by KC Trees. And yeah, so basically walked them through the whole process. So it was educational for the community, and also increase the tree cover on campus. The tree inventory, again, these are currently monthly during the growing season, not during the leaf-on season, and basically until we've inventoried all the trees on campus. So we have a few, it's mostly advertised master naturalists, and some master gardeners went too. So, it shows people recording data and measuring DPH. Those are some things that you can get involved in, required for this program. Just spread the word about this Arbor Day recognition program. If you work for another campus or know someone works for another campus, encourage them to apply and attend events that are part of this, like the Arbor Day events, which will be yearly. It'll be around Arbor Day every year. So next one will be next April, and also participate in the tree inventories. So the other major tree-related project I've been working on is oak health research. So oaks make up a large portion of DC's urban forests and provide a lot of important ecosystem services, including providing habitat for many wildlife species. However, in recent years, they have declined in condition and have had increased mortality. So this study aims to assess the condition of oak trees throughout DC and is working in cooperation with the Forest Service as well as DOE, the Department of Transportation, and will report the results back to them. So some of the results we're recording on oak trees around the city are DBH, GPS coordinates, looking at percent twig dieback, percent leaf discoloration, percent leaf defoliation, the amount of crown life exposure. So basically looking at crown health, like how can you see through the crown, how healthy does the crown look, and all those tree variables are used to assess the general condition of the tree. So I have a graduate student named Frederick Rishmiller. He's currently a master's student, and he is going around and collecting data oak trees in DC. He's only been doing that for about like a month or so, but he's already found, has some preliminary findings. So from what he found so far is generally the most unhealthy trees in the fair, poor, or dead category are white oaks. So 38% of white oaks were found to be in not great condition, followed by pin oak in the red oak group with 29% of trees. So because a lot of the white oaks, that's the species white oak, not the whole group, because the healthiest trees, weirdly enough, were swamp white oak, and the white oak group with only 7% of trees being unhealthy, and the willow oak also only had 15% of trees being unhealthy. So we're looking to survey some of these species and see why these species differences may exist. And although the preliminary surveys, because there's so many trees, oak trees in DC, are focusing on the white oak because that seems to be the group that's having the most decline. And he does speculate this might be because swamp white oak and willow oak especially are more tolerant of wet soils in the spring and dry conditions during summer. So it's another reason why it's important to water trees, because trees being dry in the summer are very harmful to the oak species, potentially, especially the white oak. But we need to do more research to determine kind of exactly why these trees are declining. So this shows one of the oaks that he photographed, and this shows, some of the damage to the leaves that shows an oak in decline in the picture on the right. So what you can do is, if you see any oak trees that are in decline, you can let me know about them. Just send me an email. You can feel free to drop my email in the chat. But yeah, and either you can send me data that if you've collected any data on oak, or I can send my grad student to go check that out, because the survey is currently ongoing. Thank you. And does anyone wonder if anyone has any questions? Okay, I see a question in chat. So Katie says, do you have an idea of what's causing oak tree declines, or is it just a variety of factors? So that's partially what we're trying to find out with the study, is to see, if there's any trends that we see that kind of indicate why this might be occurring, if it's anything specific. But most likely it's a number of factors. So we are trying to see what might be the biggest contributing factors, but it's probably a combination of causes. Does planting smaller, younger help? I'm not sure if that's specifically the case. I actually don't know for that one, to be honest, because that's not really within the scope of what we've been looking at. So
Let's go into gallery view so we can all see each
Okay.
other before we officially sign.
yeah,
And
so I can
I want to
stop.
say, I really appreciate Kelly's research, especially because any of you who have read Duck Ptolemy and been following kind of the
Mhm.
role of native trees and ecologies know that white oaks are a keystone species along with cherries and willows, native cherries and willows. So it's really important that our oaks really are as healthy as they can be. And so whatever is found to support that and to learn what's causing the disease is going to be really, really helpful. So I encourage you, if you see oaks that are having any problems, especially white oaks, to please let Kelly know. Also, feel free to email me and I'll forward things to Kelly if you've got my email. I'm noticing the northern red oaks are doing pretty well. I don't know what it is, but they're like hanging in. So they might end up being our keystone species in climate change. Who knows?
Yeah, and that's again what Fred is my grad student has found so far is that there are species differences in survival. So that is something we're potentially looking into, is why some species are doing better than others. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kelly, thank you so much for sharing your
problem.
research, and it's really
Thank you.
important ongoing work. And it wouldn't be a Zoom if a cat did not cross the screen. So Kathy Sachs, thank you. we have a real Zoom.
Yeah.
I want to thank our presenter. You guys have shared so much, and I know that Casey has really great resources. So I'm glad those are in the chat. We'll also follow up with an email. We have the recording. We'll go ahead and include that, send that to folks who couldn't get on. And Anna, do you have any final words or any invitations? I know there's a lot going on with tree programming.
Not with tree programming. Can I plug the moth event though?
Oh,
Sure, go for it.
So if there are any nature nerds out there that want to go out late at night and look for moths and other creatures of the night, we are doing one tomorrow night at the Potomac Overlook Regional Park from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. where we put up white sheets and put up the black lights and see what comes. So it's kind of fun. So this is Moth Week. So that's one of the events that's happening. And if you go, I put Capital Nature's calendar link in the chat. So if you want to go see, there are other folks also doing Moth Week events, as well as tree events. So go check our calendar for all types of events. But I just wanted to plug that particular one for tomorrow night.
And you've already mentioned the KC Trees event is coming Saturday, right, Melinda? You've got that in. Wonderful. So thank you all. We are officially closing, but we are hanging on till 8:15 if any of you are dying to talk more about trees. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for coming, everyone.